But I want to echo what Mr. Quigley said. We, on a bipartisan basis, are dedicated to get modernization of whistleblower passed, IG additional powers and enablement in a sensible way to pass. And we're going to author an IG reform bill that includes not leaving IGs vacant ever again. And I say that because transparency is not just the Data Act and getting you direct access to, and for that matter, government in general, better access, but it's also making sure that the people within the system that primarily receive that information from whistleblowers, that primarily every day we hold accountable to do the research, the studies, and ultimately IG reports are something both you, all of you in the audience, and we depend on in order to get a look inside government. And when you have a pattern under both Republican and Democratic administrations of IGs being acting and thus by definition, comparatively impotent to somebody who has the confidence of a Senate confirmation. That has to be reformed, and I'm committed to do it. Congressman Quigley and I both need to get the Data Act passed. And I come to you today a little embarrassed that, well, we've been trying to get funding, we've been trying to cut dollars, we've been trying to cut this. We haven't gotten that done. We believe that we have an offset in order to pay for the Data Act. We're running the traps right now. If we have that, the intention would be to get it to the floor as a paid-for modernization. We continue to work with the Senate. But most importantly, we need your continued help. We're not a committee that has all the answers. When you have frustrations, when you need access to something you're not getting, you have to tell us, and you have to help us figure out how, through legislation, or quite frankly, through joint letters that the caucus or the committee write, we can help make that happen. I have no illusions that the Data Act alone will fix it, or that having 100% staffing of IGs will fix it. At the end of the day, government transparency must be managed, meaning people must be dedicated both in and out of government to that transparency. It's the reason that Congressman Quigley and I formed the caucus. It's the reason we're dedicated to have a sustained organization within the House of Representatives that works with the transparency community, knowing that no matter how many laws we pass, only the oversight and the perseverance on a bipartisan basis will ensure that transparency occurs. So I want to thank you all for being here. We pledge to continue having these meetings, especially when we have the cooperation of other committees that loaned us this room, and I want to thank Judiciary for loaning us this room. If you have questions, I think we have a few minutes before they pull us away. Your answers are probably better than mine. Yes. Yes. Good.
Obviously, the Data Act's a great move for federal spending, but I did notice that it doesn't include providing full contract tax online. Is there some hesitation to do that, or doing that, or?
No. You know, I think that there'd probably have to be a nuanced language to it because of the nature of some contract text, but we'll look at that. That's a good suggestion. You and then you, sir, but go ahead.
I wonder if you could elaborate on how you're trying to structure the Data Act so that you can advance it.
Well, our real problem with the Data Act is that even though, scoring around here is a game of numbers that don't necessarily deal with reality. I think everyone knows that if we harmonize data reporting and create that opportunity for interoperable transparency, that the business of driving the sites to be interoperable, to in fact having the spending sites go from many to one, it's all a cost savings. But under scoring, they only give us a very small score for what we're shutting down and a big score for what we want to do. So we knew we had to find as much as $100 million to, quote, pay for it. We believe we found that. I don't have any questions. I don't think anyone has any questions that if the conversion is done in a timely fashion, this will save money very quickly. But CBO wouldn't score it that way, and that's one of the responsibilities we have in the House, is to have a pay for, and it's You know, I'd like to waive pay for, but you start waiving it on something like this, somebody also want to waive it on a pet project that may in fact never save a penny. So we do think we have it. We're not going to tell you what it is until we know we have it. But it is what has held up the bill so far. Yes, sir.
So last March during Sunshine Week, there was a series of hearings in the House and Senate on open government. One of the major themes was the problem of compliance. It's one thing to have great principles about open government. It's another thing to actually get the agencies to enforce those principles. I'm wondering what has happened since last March to encourage enforcement of these great open government principles that are often not executed in the sense of innovation.
Well, a lot of visibility on the problem, not much real solution. It was a partisan hearing in which we brought in the FOIA people to explain that the Department of Homeland Security had willfully turned over FOIA discovery to political appointees, and they were allowed to delay, intervene, or even leak FOIA. That would be an example where the ultimate in compliance that everyone has understood for a long time, that you get a FOIA request, you turn it over to career professionals, they do their work, ultimately it goes to the requester, is taking a step backwards. We don't have an assurance that that's quit. And it may be one of those things that in the waning days before the presidential election, we ask the President to codify something that would prevent it from happening in the future. We haven't offered legislation yet. We do intend to have another round of hearings on FOIA compliance, because if it's allowed to continue or to reoccur the way it did under one cabinet position in this administration, I have no doubt that future administrations of both parties will follow suit. And that's, even though, like I say, it was a fairly contentious hearing, I think we all have to understand this is the kind of thing you stop now, or the other party will say, well, the other guy did it, and pretty soon FOIA is more of a political football than freedom of information.
I think there's a taste for this. Every movement has to have victories. I think the movement toward greater transparency needs some of these bills to pass. I think congressionally mandated reports, there's some critical analysis out there. Mr. Tierney did an excellent report on funding the insurgency, and there was a follow-up committee meeting recently about that, dealing with Afghanistan. Once the public gets a taste for this sort of thing and it's available, I think that will keep this process moving and force agencies, whomever is in charge, to move forward and to make things accessible and not play games. One more question, we better go, Bo.
Yes, ma'am.
You discussed the role of whistleblowers as providing information for issues as your anti-whistleblower. If they have very few protections going forward at the moment.
Say that a little louder, please.
Whistleblowers, given the lack of rights that federal employees have at the moment. I know that the Senate introduced whistleblower protection enhancement act earlier this Congress, and I'm wondering what the prospects are of your committee moving forward with this.
I'm going to be completely transparent here. We have had, under both Republican and Democratic leadership, we have had a problem getting a Whistleblower Act that included the classified community. It doesn't matter who's the chair. Somehow the Select Intelligence Committees in the House have not been able to find the same solution that what we call SISI, the Senate Intelligence Committee, found. Our intention is to move something that is either identical or compatible with the SISI solution. And it is my intention to move that with or without the support of the Select Intelligence Committee in the House. So that's a tough one for us, because I've given them time, we've worked with them, we've done everything we can, but we will move it, and we will move it. My intention is to move it before the end of the year, and if it isn't moved for any reason, to have an in my own party public display of we have to have whistleblower, and whistleblower cannot somehow exempt the stuff that is least transparent. So getting that right is important. It's something that I was deeply disappointed we almost but didn't quite get through in the last Congress. We will get it through in this Congress.
So what happens 3 minutes ago, there's only 100 left to vote.
And there's 2 here. So thank you very much.
Thank you.